Robert Burns was born to William and Agnes Burns, or Burness as they were known as at that time, on the 25th of January 1759 in the village of Alloway, on a plot of ground called New Gardens. The cottage, which we now know as Burns Cottage, started as 2 rooms, a butt and ben, which served as a kitchen or living room and a small byre. But the Burness family extended the cottage to the north, including a proper byre and a barn. The family would spend most of the time in this room, the kitchen. They would have cots on the floor for the children and a couple of box beds for the adults. His father grew up on a farm in Kincardineshire, and the farm wasn't doing too well. So he was an economic migrant, actually. He moved from one side of Scotland to another, and he was a gardener to trade, and he found some work in the area around Alloway. William Burness intended to use the 7.5 acres here as a market garden, but he had a full-time job. He was a gardener at a local estate, and he found that his time was taken up by that. So instead of using the land as a market garden, he gave over the land, pretty much all of it, to his wife to run a small dairy herd, and Agnes would milk the cows, make cheese and butter, and sell that at the roadside. Betty Davidson was a cousin of Burns' mother, and she used to gather the children around the fireside at night and tell them really scary ghost stories, which Burns later used to great effect in Tam O'Shanter. He said he needed an effort of philosophy to overcome some of the fears that were put into him as a child. So if he was in a dark place, I mean, farms were dark places in those days, he would constantly look over his shoulder because of some of these stories he had heard as a kid. It was still a time of great superstition in Scotland, so as children they would have been genuinely scared by some of the ghost stories he heard. He would have been expected to do more of the chores than the others, but he was still very young when he lived here, so he would have been doing some manual work, but nothing too onerous. Later in his life, when he became a teenager, in the next place that the Burns family lived, Mount Oliphant, he became the chief labourer, so things were to get a lot tougher for him. Of course, his mum and dad made a huge impression, especially his father. Burns mentions his father far more than his mother in his writings. We have some relics from the original cottage which are now on display in the museum, and that includes his father's family Bible, where he recorded the birth of the 7 children that Agnes and William had, his father's armchair, and you can just imagine William Burness sitting on it. He's quite a stern figure as far as we can tell. And we have his mother's milking stool and her nursing chair in the collection. He did know that during his lifetime that he would be more famous after his death than during his lifetime. But yeah, the scale I think would be something that he couldn't comprehend.